All right, let's get on to this week's blend game. We are playing hashtag Russell Crowe blend to go along with Unhinged. And just the fact that Russell Crowe is a really great guy who did interviews with the guys so far today. Not today, but over the course of promoting Unhinged. You can go to their YouTube channels and find each of those. So let's get into our picks. And I'm going to throw it to Jake. Your favorite Russell Crowe film?
I could not pick anything other than Gladiator.
Really?
I just think it is, one, an incredible performance on his part that covers a vast, wide range of emotions. Like he's a little bit more subdued and low-key, but still is able to elicit so many. I mean, like when his vengeful feeling whenever he comes eye to eye with Commodus for the first time since becoming a slave, the travesty of his wife and son being brutally murdered, the love that he has for the Caesar, for Richard Harris at the beginning of the film. It's a very subdued performance, but even within that performance is able to touch on so many different emotions. And just the film itself, I think Ridley Scott does an incredible job of bringing this world to life. Obviously, Sword and Sandal epic, something that's been around for decades, but I felt like it's the most accessible and the best it's been done, sort of within modern era. And my girlfriend and I recently rewatched it to get ready for the interview with Russell, and I think it holds up incredibly well 20 years later. It's both an enjoyable film, but also just really a high constructed piece of art, and I love it. And there are a lot of other films that he's been in that I genuinely love, but in terms of, this is really my usage of the word favorite. I just love it. I love
this
it.
one was really hard to do. He's got so many great films. Kev, did you pick Gladiator also?
No, I did A Beautiful Mind, and I've explained it on the show before, so I won't take too much time with it. But it's just a film that I heavily relate to because of the mental aspect of it, and I've been in therapy all my life, and one of the things I've always talked about was a scene from that movie, and I've mentioned it on the show before, but I'll just briefly mention it again in case someone new is listening. But there's a moment at the end of that film. If you remember, the whole film is him struggling with the mental illness and that he's going through, and he's obviously seeing things. Paul Bettany's character, and then there was this great moment at the end of the film, which is like to this day the thing that I hope I can achieve before I die, which is to be able to walk past the mental illness for a moment and push through with your life. Because with mental illness and mental health, I don't want to call it a mental illness. I feel like that's the wrong word to use. I'm going to say mental health. But, we there's a big stigma around it. People don't talk about it as much, but Beautiful Mind really put that on the map in regards to showing a character his struggle and what he was going through. But in that film, at the end, as he walks past Paul Bettany and Bettany tries to kind of get his attention, right, to kind of pull him back into that world. And I think Crowe just continues walking right past him, right? And I always tell my that's what I tell my therapist every time I talk, not every time, but every couple weeks I'll bring up that scene and I'll say, that's where I want to get. How do I get there? Because with me, with OCD and anxiety, it's paralyzing. It paralyzes you. It's mentally, it's hard to push through your day. It's hard to push through, it's hard for me to come home sometimes and, be a good husband because I'm so in my own worries and anxieties from driving and whatever it would be. And so I always look at that moment as all right, he was really, really dealing with some horrible mental health issues, right? I mean, it was getting bad. That character's going through something a lot worse than what my own mental state is with OCD and things like that. But to see his character, which is a true story, right? Obviously, it's based on a true story.
Yeah, John Nash.
To see John Nash just walk past with that confidence. And I remember one thing my therapist told me years ago was basically the OCD and the anxieties are always going to be in my mind. They're not going to go away. It's just because I have a chemical imbalance. But you can choose how you're going to react to it. And for the longest time, John Nash's character is so weak in himself that he doesn't have confidence in himself that he allows it to take over, hurts his marriage, obviously. And so for me, that film meant a lot just on a personal level because it showed me a victory of somebody who went through something really bad, but still was able to acknowledge that it was there and move past it. And I know, and here's the thing, at the end of the day, everyone's going to fall back. Everyone's going to fall back into the worries and the anxieties. And, maybe the next day he does stop and go over to Paul Bettany in his mind, right? But you know, it was just a really inspiring story, and obviously gorgeously photographed and shot by, you know, directed by Ron Howard, and Jennifer Connelly is outstanding. Remember Connelly in the bathroom when she like screams that it was like in the trailer? I think she's in front of a mirror or something. It was like this insane scream. I just gut wrenching.
If I remember, it's just because she got so fed up with it. Like she reached her breaking point of dealing with him.
Exactly, and that's the sad thing about mental health when you see it. Now you're seeing it in a film form there, but like, you know, it's not just the person going through it, it's the person surrounding that person as well, whoever, you know. And so while his was way more extreme than mine is, I just always looked at it as a really interesting way to maybe see a clear path past the anxiety. So
that's amazing, dude.
Yeah,
that's a
why
great
I love
story.
That film.
Yeah, I don't even want to go.
I think I've told it before. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't want to.
So Sean, tell me why you love The Nice Guys.
Oh God, it's awful. Mine's LA Confidential. If only because. I love that genre, and I've discussed this at length, that I love detective crime stories. I love things set in the film noir world. I'm obsessed with Los Angeles and Hollywood, and that has the element of the prostitutes who are reworked into famous film stars so that they could be paired up with Johns, and then it's got this terrific twist in the middle of it, which I won't give away. The Rollo Tomasi hook that allowed Kevin Spacey to get the upper hand. It's one of those ones too where the ensemble is so fantastic. So I don't really want to call it a Russell Crowe film, although he's significant to it, but everyone in it is fantastic. I like that it came sort of at the earlier stages of his career where nobody quite knew how good Russell Crowe was going to be yet. And he's so talented, he doesn't let himself get typecast to just play sort of bruiser cops, which he probably could have played for a decade after LA Confidential, but instead he shows up in movies like Master and Commander or something as subtle as Beautiful Mind. It's funny looking over his filmography. I kind of thought that we were wasting Russell Crowe's good years, but it turns out he's been consistent still all the way through. Like Nice Guys was still relatively recently. And yes, he's taken things like Unhinged, but I think he has another tremendous performance, you know, in a really noteworthy film. Well, Les Mis was relatively recently. And so, he's fantastic. But I would go for favorite film of his. I would, if you're telling me to pull one of his films out of the shelf and throw it in, I'm going to go LA Confidential just about every single time. So audience picks. Dante and Amanda Young went with Kevin and said A Beautiful Mind. Ray Perkin and Carter went with me and said LA Confidential. Joel McFarlane went with Jake and said Gladiator. Terry Tingren and Braden Roberts, who works at CinemaBlend, went 310 to Yuma.
Great movie.
Terrific film. Carrie Case, Wicket Lou, and Josh went with The Nice Guys. And then John Palmer chose The Insider. The Insider is one of those movies that I have to revisit. I mean, I remember loving it, but it's a movie that I just haven't gone back to see in a really long time.
One of Pacino's last great performances, and it was like 20 years ago.
I need to go back and rewatch
Gabe, what would you pick?
Gabe hates playing this game.
Yeah, I don't play this game.
But you gotta have one, man.
I don't have one. I like him in a lot of things. I don't play the game. I don't play the game.
It's awful.
I direct the game. I don't play the game.
It's awful that All right. Well, speaking of directing the game, Gabe is telling us that for next week we're going to be playing #Octavia Spencer Blend. So you will use #Octavia Spencer Blend to let us know your pick, and we will potentially read it on the show.